Hello and welcome to today's episode. And today I'm here with George Thompson, and we are super excited to have a conversation that is no doubt going to be enormous. George, what do you think?
Let's go. I like enormous.
It's absolutely huge, and I'm excited to be having this conversation because you're right at the point where your film, The Subtle Art of Losing Yourself, has just launched. So that feels like the best place to kick off. You are obviously a filmmaker, huge presence on YouTube as well. Tell us what inspired this project and tell me a little bit about the title.
Yeah, beautiful. Well, I am really delighted to be here. My name is George, and I am a filmmaker, storyteller, and educator. And my journey started in anxiety and confusion, not really knowing what I was doing with my life, thinking I was uniquely messed up for finding life hard and getting anxious and confused. But somehow stumbled across ancient Chinese practices and ideas where I went to China to try and learn Kung Fu. And that was a whole journey that took me to Tai Chi and to meditation. And I found, wow, I'm not alone in finding life difficult. And wow, there's ancient ideas that can help me. And wow, actually, peace is possible, at least some semblance of peace, to find a sense of ease in the midst of all of the beauty and challenge of being human. And that was coming up to 8 years ago now when I started my journey as a clueless 21-year-old. And I have since been making films about what I've been learning and been really touched and humbled that thousands and thousands of people from all around the world have joined for the journey. And I run a YouTube channel now with 250,000 subscribers. With my Tai Chi master, Master Gu, we've brought his teachings onto the internet. And we run now the biggest Tai Chi school in the world, which is such a joy. And then my film, The Subtle Art of Losing Yourself, which is my second film. I'm so excited to get it out to the world. It is recorded in the Cairngorm Mountains in Scotland, and we see the intelligence of the animals out there. We ask the question, well, if they're intelligent, where does our intelligence come from? And then you and I, we adventure through the mountains together to find an awe-inspiring understanding of who we really are and our place in the universe. So that's the film, and The Subtle Art of Losing Yourself is it's kind of a bit of a play on what we normally think self-development is and finding ourselves. It's like we're often, craving after the next course, the next book, the next podcast to find ourselves. But then, through, and I could expand on it more, what we learn is actually we've got another option, which is to lose ourselves, and it's not as bad as it sounds.
I absolutely love the title because, like you, I've been slightly refined in the fire through my own personal experiences. And here we are, we come out the other side with something to share with other people, which is where we were sort of connecting in the first place. I spent a lot of time, George, trying to run away from myself. And then I thought I had to find myself. So can you just explain to people listening who might now be thinking, well, should I be trying to look for myself or lose myself? What would you say to that?
Yeah. So I think the starting point is to hurt is to be human. And like I said, with my journey, is like I would beat myself up and feel shame about me being anxious and not tell anyone. My inner critic I personified as as the underminer, a little troubled wizard that would say, "Hey, George, still single, not many friends. You are flawed goods. Oh, and now you're anxious. You're weak for being anxious." And so that was my headspace. And I really didn't know how to relate to that voice. So to hurt is to be human. And like the Buddha's core teachings is like, not that life is suffering, but life has suffering. And, that is not something that is unique to us. It's part of the human condition. The good news is, though, that peace is possible, that when we understand ourselves, we gain wisdom. So wisdom is to see clearly. And then with that wisdom and that clarity, then we can navigate life with more skill. And from that skill comes peace. So it's it's a beautiful paradox of both taking action, searching for peace and trying to learn about ourselves, but also crucially letting it all go. Because I went to China searching for peace, which is, it's a nice intention, but until you realize, and I realized that so long as I define myself as someone searching for peace, I define myself as someone at war with themselves. So it was only really when I let go of that intention that there was anything to fix. It was only then that I could just ease into the peace that I was looking for all along. And so it speaks to really the beauty of being a human with a human mind. We create concepts of, George not being good enough. George can be better. George goes learn things. George improves. which is all great until I realize that that thinking never ends and I will get caught in that endless thinking. Thankfully, there is another option, and that is what the core teaching of meditation gives us, the core training, is I can just let it all go. I can come to my breath. I can lose myself. What does that mean? To not just be George, but to have moments of silence and presence. Like if we're in the shower and we're singing and we're just feeling the water on our face, or if we're walking the dog, or if we're holding a newborn child. I'm not narrating to myself, oh, am I holding this baby okay? Or like, oh, this water's, whatever, like the judgments coming up in our minds maybe. A beautiful definition of enlightenment I love is enlightenment is the space between thoughts. So it's that moments and continual moments of presence. And that means that enlightenment isn't just this rarefied thing reserved for monks levitating off rocks somewhere in the mountains, but instead it's something that is available to us. When we find spaciousness, we can lose everything, and through that losing ourselves, find peace.
Amazing. George, when you put it like that, it sounds like something everybody would want. And I'm a sophrologist, so I spend time in a clinic teaching the practice of sophrology, meditation, breathwork, visualization, and gentle body movement. And that's a corporate way of trying to get to a similar place. And I have varying results. Lots of people come back and I get lots of referrals. So that's great. It works. The method's been around since the 1960s. But let me ask you, the biggest challenge people have is just being still enough to do the work. What's your advice there?
And first of all, just celebrating your work, and there's so many different approaches that are going to be needed. Like your work resonating in a business setting, really important. These are the leaders that shape so much of our world, and my approach will be slightly different. Our beautiful viewers and listeners will have different gifts and different communities that they can speak to, and even just us finding a semblance, bit more peace, and saying, hey, this stuff that I've been doing on myself I feel the difference. If more of us do that, it can have impactful ripple effects. And so rather than, society and humanity being saved by some hero above us, really the healing of the world comes from all of us doing that bit of work and then coming together in communities that ultimately, if there's enough of us, we can transform the systems that shape our world. So,
yeah. I mean, and here we are, because we're going to avoid the US election conversation today because we are recording on a tricky day. But
indeed,
if we all wake up a little bit, then all sorts of exciting things happen. And you actually articulate that beautifully in the film towards the end, where we have this sort of collective movement. And I see people sort of go, oh, that's not really for me. I don't really know what you're talking about. It sounds a bit woo-woo, which makes my heart break, because the work I do was born out of a neuropsychiatrist's experience giving people electric shocks. He was so horrified that Caicedo actually went around the world and tried to bring these Eastern practices into the West. And here we are, a long time later, really only just scratching the surface. Tell me about your community, because I do want to mention that to people today. You run an online community where people can connect with each other and be part of this movement that's coming from all different angles.
For sure. So yeah, my philosophy of change is insight, practice, community. So insight to help us break into new understandings of who we really are and our potential for peace. But then we need practices to keep those insights alive. And then we need community to support each other on the journey. And then ultimately communities of service coming together to transform the systems that shape our world. So often self-development, find yourself. It's like self. It's very individualistic. When really, us living with resilience and joy is important, and we deserve that. And then with that new foundation of strength and resilience, how do we show up in the world? And to contribute to a more awesome world, can't think of something more meaningful than that. So it doesn't need to be then woo-woo or something that's just esoteric and reserved for activists. It's like in an interconnected world, and science shows that conclusively, that everything is in relationship, that actually we can have meaningful yet hard to measure effects on the whole. And so to keep that understanding alive, that we do matter. It's not that the whole world rests on our shoulders and we've got to take responsibility for everyone else's problems, but if we choose to be empowered, that we can make a difference. Then with community, like we are I'm really passionate about the videos and films that we make as being able to reach a lot of people. That's the
Mhm.
beautiful thing about filmmaking and YouTube, is that we can reach millions and millions of people. And then how can I and the organization I've created called Balance as Possible, how do we then help people really connect physically as well as online? So our starting point is Wayfinders, which is our community, which is free, wayfinders.global. Anyone can join. But really the longer term vision of it is to be a springboard off, where you've maybe watched one of the films and you see that, okay, I want to be part of the movement. This sounds fun. Cool people that want to contribute to a more awesome world. And then what are your local groups around you? So yeah, community being the key.
Amazing. And I see a lot of people who are actually quite isolated now. Their work has perhaps gone online, they're not going into the office, they're sort of on their own in an echo chamber sometimes of some weird doom scrolling social media type stuff. This is an opportunity for people to actually reconnect both physically in their local area, but also online.
Exactly. Yeah. And the doom scrolling, like from our psychology, this is something that's been really supporting me. Is like I said at the start, I used to think I was uniquely messed up. Then I found, okay, the ancient Chinese struggled too. And then I found, wait, I have a brain that works basically the same way that yours does. And if we're to hugely simplify the brain, there's three levels: the reptilian brain, the mammalian brain, and then the human brain, or the prefrontal cortex. And yeah, the if we think about our evolutionary history, we are social beings, tribal beings, and for thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of years, it made sense that we needed to be supported by the community. We needed to play along with the myths and the stories of that community. We needed to fit in, and that kept us alive. Now that's beautiful. The challenge with it, though, is that we are tribal beings, and with social media, we all live in our own echo chambers. It's a cliche to say it, but it means that we can live in different realities. And I think one of the crucial things that we need to come back to is, like, we do live on a planet, right? It's like we can live in our own kind of communities and worlds. That's great. But we also need to come back to the reality of, there's a set number of trees, there's a set number of oil and gas in the ground. And if we release too much of it into the atmosphere, it warms the whole planet up. And we are rapidly doing that and destroying our ability to live on the planet. There are some fundamental things that we can discover about the world when we observe it. So yeah, when we come out of our echo chambers and we connect physically with people that think and act differently from us, then we realize that, okay, we don't need to be the same to cooperate. Can we reach across the aisle? And I do think, what I've been sharing in my life that's been really helpful is nonviolent communication. The tools of communicating ourselves, like, this is how I'm feeling and this is what I need. And to communicate it in a way that's likely to be heard by another person. These skills are so important because, sometimes we can imagine, well, I'm in an echo chamber of people that think and act like me. So what's the point? I'm not reaching beyond to the masses. Then really, how do we step across? So we need to be grounded in our own selves so that then we can speak in a way that's likely to be heard instead of just reactivity and blame.
I love that. I really do. And I appreciate the fact that I think you and I have probably got very different audiences at the moment,
Mm,
but we're still willing to connect because there's so much when I talk corporately about this as well. And especially when I see people talking about ESG and things, like, really insights about what's inside of you and what your gifts and talents and your passions really are. And I did really want to thank you today just for your generosity of spirit in your life. I see you really leaning into serving other people with what you've learned and your experience. And isn't that what we all want to do? Signpost a bit, say, look, I went here and it didn't work so well, so you could
yeah,
go here instead, and it might be a bit better. And can I
yeah.
share that with you? But that
And
doesn't seem how it works. Mm.
yeah, and the problem of our modern world is that it's like, be successful. So get the job, get the house, get the kids, get the holidays, get all the stuff, retire, then die. It's
Yeah,
like that's you've completed it. And the problem with success is that if we're aiming for success, we have necessarily defined ourselves as unsuccessful in this present moment. And that creates judgment. And then through that judgment about ourselves, that can feed into the rest of our lives, that not enoughness, the craving of happiness that's outside of us, contentment that's outside of us. And then we're always caught in this chase of getting the next thing, getting used to it, moving on to the next thing. The beautiful thing about service is that it feels good whether it's big or small. it's from the inside out, just as you expressed. Success is this energy is like clinging and climbing after something. Service is I want to contribute. So, sometimes people may think, well, like George, the ideas you share, they're too big for me. Like my grand's ill and like I'm looking after the kids at home. But with service, like first of all, to nourish ourselves, self-care is not self-indulgence. It's the foundation upon which we can serve. And then not to judge our service. So if it is like actually just being with my gran with love right now is what my wisdom is calling me to do, to not feel guilty about that, to be with our family, to not be guilty about that. And then if you choose from an empowered place instead of a place of guilt and trying to be more from a place of service, I want to contribute, volunteering, activism, changing your job to make it more about service, then that's how I see the world changing.
I also see people go the wrong side of that sometimes. So I was, of course, in the echo chamber. Something came up the other day about toxic heroics. We serve, 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 because then we can actually rush in and feel like we're rescuing people. And I think there's an internal and an external conversation here, isn't there? Because if it's all on the external, serving, 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 but we haven't done that internal work, it becomes this very odd, egotistical feeling. And I don't think I've explained that very well, but I think you know exactly what I'm talking about.
Mm. Yeah, and that's one of my wounds is see me daddy, like dad, like I love my dad. He worked a lot, and I'd get more attention if I did well at school and achieved. And so, that was one of my wounds is like it's the not enoughness, like keep working until I'm enough. And I have been in a process of reprogramming that. And actually, yeah, because the problem of that is that we help other people thinking we're the heroes, but really we're not doing it we could actually serve in a much more beautiful and crucially sustainable way if we were really to nourish ourselves, and from that place of overflowing, then we actually have more energy. So, like to sleep enough, to move every day, to play and to do something every day for its own sake. For me, it's singing or climbing trees. Everyone's got their own thing that they do to make them joyful. And, those things are not self-indulgences. They're actually, first of all, just to enjoy our lives, right? We've been given this gift of life, like to enjoy it. And then also it creates this beautiful, inviting energy. Instead of like, I'll save you. I have not sorted out any of my things in my relationships and it's terrible at home, but I'll save you. It's like, it's not as inspiring as like, hey, I'm a human that goes through challenges just like you, and I'm working on them. And also I've created enough spaciousness now that, yeah, I really want to contribute to your life being awesome.
Yeah, I mean, we could talk about that all day, couldn't we? But there is the rub. I really want to serve, but I've got some stuff I need to sort out myself. And a lot of people come through my doors because they can't sleep,
Yeah.
and ultimately they can't sleep because they haven't got the pillars of well-being sorted: food, nutrition, hydration, exercise,
Yeah.
relaxation. And when I say what you do to relax, they say go for a run. Probably the least relaxing thing that you could do. Your body's like, oh, we're running away from something. What should we do? Which is why the meditation is so, so, so important. Yet it seems to have fallen out of favour totally. Can I come back to the film? Because the film is currently hosted on the platform, the Moving Art channel by Louis Schwartz. And that's how people can find it at the moment. Is that right?
Yeah, so actually from November 9th, it will be on YouTube. So it'll be out with the world.
Oh, that's really exciting. What I thought was quite incredible about that channel, not only has it been in existence for a very, very long time, and Louis is an incredibly acclaimed director and filmmaker, but he actually writes about, he talks about nature a lot. And one of the things he said is nature's beauty inspires gratitude. And I think for me, that has been transformational in my own life, just beginning to appreciate stopping and appreciating the little tiny bits of grass or sun, which is actually a sophrology practice that we do. Tell me about nature and the beauty of nature being so important in terms of gratitude and perspective, because I think it's a quick win.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Human beings have an almost unlimited capacity to take everything for granted.
Oh dear.
So, and it kind of makes sense from an evolutionary perspective, which is that, if you think about two families, you've got the strivers and the enjoyers. And the strivers are always worrying about, is the winter going to be really bad. We've got to work harder. We've got to do more. And the enjoyers are like, okay, we've got enough food. We're going to relax. The problem is that when the bad winter does come, who's the family that's going to survive? It's going to be the strivers. So from an evolutionary perspective, it makes sense that we have a tendency to not feel grateful for what we already have and to focus on the next thing. So to be firstly compassionate to that. And then that is why then the beauty of being human is that we can consciously choose where to place our attention. And when we do that, then we have an emotional response. So if we choose gratitude consciously as a daily practice, then it actually makes us more predisposed to seeing the beauty of life, the beauty that's already there. And our language already has that, like stop and smell the roses. A cliche is a truth said many times. Often we look for I need the 8-step mega process in order to fix me because I'm so special and complicated. It's like, no, actually it's really simple. Sleep, eat, do something that gives you joy, be in connection, and revere nature, revere yourself. Your life's going to be great if you do that, and do something meaningful with your life that feels good for you. So for me, nature, it's funny how, like, I grew up in the city and I love the city, but it can be so easy to forget where we came from and actually to reconnect with the great mystery. Like, that's where it takes me, is the mystery of life. That when I consciously choose to see a flower springing open in the spring, wow, here I am. Or like the daffodils, like the trumpets of spring. Da, 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 spring is here. It's for me a remembering. Members, the body, remembering, to re-embody, to recognize, to recognitize. Is to come back into relationship with that which I already am, that which I'm already a part of. And so, there's maybe some big words, and feel free to ignore them and see just what happens when you just stop and pause, as you said, and just embrace and see what your senses reveal to you.
What I see happen with people is they say, Lindsay, I did that pausing thing and it was so boring and I was so bored I didn't know what to do with myself. And my journey through the emotional cycle has been, I don't think it's boredom. I think you're getting towards peace and stillness, but you think it's boredom.
Mm.
And you also just said something about, basically being able to choose your emotions. George, do you agree with me on that you can choose your emotional state?
So for me, it's a both and it's a beautiful question, first of all. So it's like, if shame is here, so like, say, for example, I got frauded and scammed last year and lost all of my money when I was making the film and already was in a bank loan. And yeah, it was a very big energetic challenge. And the first emotion was shame. It's like, I'm the Tai Chi guy. I'm supposed to come to my breath in times of challenge. And I didn't. And I'm a tech person and I got done by scammers. How stupid of me. So, life hits us with big unexpected blows. We lose people, we get sick, things that happen, things that we don't want happen, things that we do want don't happen. That's the life involves suffering that we started this conversation with. So emotions, energy in motion. So if something's here, it's here, right? And we've got to embrace it and accept it. And really, that's a big, big teaching and a big learning in my life as well. Again, we've talked about how we often run away from emotion, from the challenge. We distract ourselves. I loved how you literally said, like running often as us running away. There can be cathartic release to it as well. But then I definitely do believe we can shape our reality in really powerful ways, including, our reality includes our thoughts and feelings. And so even that act of compassion, of me allowing myself to be in shame and allowing myself to like be held by my family when I got frauded and lost everything, that meant that I didn't keep that within. And that meant that it didn't get stuck in my nervous system. Then I could flow out of it. And so, I did get out of that intense challenge for me. And then, as we've said with gratitude as well, it's like, actually, often we think that our emotions are just things that happen to us, but we can consciously choose to bring an energy into our lives, emotions, energy and motion. So yes, for sure, we can shape our experience of life.
I really appreciate you sharing that, because I see people come to me and say, I can't do this anymore. And they're trying to change something on the outside without knowing that they have got the agency to be able to affect how they respond and then how they feel. And I just feel like we've been sort of hoodwinked into thinking we can't.
Absolutely. And it's a convenient story for the powers that be, not to get too conspiratorial about it. But, if people believe they don't have the power to change their experience of life, then they submit to the unjust systems that shape our worlds. But a really powerful quote that has supported me and is a classic in this world by Viktor Frankl is, between the stimulus and the response, there is a space. And that space is our freedom and power. So yeah, some people have, due to the injustices in the world, have more opportunities than other people. But all of us have some power to move from where we are. And so actually that is really empowering, that to step into our power, that, okay, that person, that colleague who is so reactive and problematic, it's not that they're making you angry, it's that they're triggering anger in you. And then that crucial distinction means that, okay, actually, I have the freedom either to take myself out of this or to come to my breath and to use my practice to stay grounded and not let their unconsciousness then ruin my evening where I want to go hang out with my friends. That's the power that we do have.
And I love the fact that you've reminded people as well that when we allow that to pass through us, oh my gosh, this person's really annoying me, and not falling for the story, being like, oh, there is a feeling of annoyance.
Mm,
And now I'll breathe and it will pass. And it does. And when you learn that, everything changes.
mm,
It's so exciting. Can I go back to something you said about the voice in your head, George? Because I work with grown-ups mostly, and I work with lots of men for some reason. And when I talk about the voices in our head, I see people get a little bit frightened, like, oh my gosh, do you know about the voices in my head? Do you think I'm mad? And I say, oh no, it happens to everybody. There's a theatre. I mean, I've got thousands of people sometimes, and some of them I tend to evict, and some of them have the most great outfits but are really mean, and they're not welcome anymore.
mm.
So sometimes they come to the party, but I try not to invite them too often. Can you just tell me about making that feel like a gentle conversation with people, because it's so important?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, so I always lead with my experience. And I think this is a really important thing that's changing from, like, the doctor in the white suit from on high tells thee how thou shalt live thy life, to, like, hey, I'm a human with you in the trenches, and, life can be challenging. And hey, like,
Mm.
I've got this voice in my head, and it's funny, like, I can be so harsh to myself in ways that I'd never talk to a friend. Like, is that something that you experience? It then gives the
Oh,
permission to, yeah, to, like, oh yeah, that is something that I've experienced. And for me, parts is the key word. So it's been so healing for me to know that, okay, my underminer is a part of me. So I have an inner critic that is sometimes outrageously harsh and unreasonably harsh. And, at least I know that now. Whereas before, if we kind of don't talk about this voice in our heads, we make it us. Like, so either we fight the thinking, like, no, I am good enough, and, like, no, I shouldn't be thinking these thoughts, versus, okay, this is a part of me just running this script that is maybe from my childhood or from our biological conditioning. Then we normalize it. Then it's not just me, but then it's being human. And so, yeah, starting with vulnerability and then to speak to the brain and the evolution of it. That's often what I go to help normalize the experience.
and you've been very gracious in sharing that funny wound that says I'm not good enough. And the reality, I think, is that we all feel that because it keeps us safe.
Mm,
As a child, that desire to please keeps us in the tribe, it keeps us attached to our caregiver. But it can run into a weird place where we're looking for that constant sort of affirmation, and simply we never receive what we think we're looking for. But what's your advice there? Because I see it so often.
yeah, yeah. It is a fundamental need to be a human, is to belong and to connect. And we are social creatures. And that, how am I doing? It's not necessarily a bad thing. It's like, actually, to have some feedback from our relationships of, how are we doing, can keep a family cohesive, can keep society's cohesive. The problem is that when we lose ourselves and we lose our complete sense of self to the whims of other people's reactions, often, not even them explicitly saying how they feel, but us reading into their signals of, oh, she didn't look at me in the right way, therefore she doesn't like me. That was one of my my dating things. It's like, just like, she doesn't like me and I'm going to run away. That was me. And, it's just like funny how that would be my reaction, just that sensitivity to not even confirm signals of how other people are thinking about me, but just go to the worst case scenario, escape because that's safer. So yeah, it's part of being human. And I think for me, it's like meditation has been the path that has supported me the most, because it's for me to really understand the nature of what these thoughts are. I'm not my thoughts. In meditation, what we experience is the constant arising and passing of thoughts and experiences and itches and uncomfortable feelings in our knees. And if we can stay with the totality of that experience and to watch it, then we realize that we are not our thoughts. We are the embodied awareness within which the thoughts arise and pass. For me, then, that totally expands my sense of self. No longer am I just small George craving after affection and attention and like, please see me, daddy. But instead, I am this spacious George. And yeah, okay, there's still that part of me that, craves that attention and that belonging, but it's held in a much bigger space. Then it doesn't overwhelm me. Then I can choose. And this is really what we're coming to as a theme. It's to notice our experience, to center, and then to choose. And that centering is one crucial piece that we miss so often in self-development and just really education, is like, we're not just our thoughts. Open up into some spaciousness, really understand who you are. Then there's so much more ease in our lives.
It's that change thing. What should I change, Lindsay? What tablets do you think I could take for this? Is there any medication you've seen? What supplement do you think I should do? Should I change the exercise? It's like, can we stop changing things? And like you say, exactly, center. Be still and allow ourselves to do this processing that we just, like, it's been stolen from us. We're just in this crazy world of being distracted and in total chaos. George, on my list of things to talk about is movement, because I was lucky enough to practice some of your movement videos that you were doing. Yes, I think they came online yesterday, did they? And I've noticed that my left toe is definitely stuck, and now I'm going to have to sit on the floor for days on end to try and release it. But we don't sit on the floor and we don't move anymore, although I see thousands of people in the gym. This doesn't seem to make sense to me. So movement is so important to become aware of our body, embodied, and have this mind-body connection, which is what the sophrology is all about. Tell me how you have led yourself into that, what you've experienced, and just advocate for that desperate need to move in that way.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah, movement, one of our fundamental needs, like a doorway, like the hinge of a door. It rusts if the door isn't opened or closed. But that hinge can stay perfectly fine for decades, so long as the door is being used. Same thing with our bodies. We need to move our bodies in order to live with energy and to be injury free. There's often like a myth in how we think about our energy, which is that, we sleep, our energy resets, and then we use it throughout the day. It's not the case. It's what we do gives us energy, and what we don't do can give us energy. So to choose movement is actually something that can bring energy and clarity and focus into the rest of our lives. Then how do we do that movement? And often movement is like, do the yoga class, do the walking with the dog, do the gym, do the run at the end of the day after sitting 8 hours being still. All of those are great, awesome. And can we bring movement throughout the day? Because laptop work is sedentary work. And often, because all of us, including myself, so many of us work on our laptops, we forget that it is a sedentary form of working. And so to bring more movement into our lives is so important through our working days. The good news is that it is relatively easy and is something that we can journey with, and is a very joyful journey because we gain more energy. So for example, right now, for viewers, they will see that I am on the floor. And for listeners, I am on the floor. And I've got a little meditation cushion. And I do a lot of my laptop work on the floor. Now, the thing with being on the floor versus a chair is that you get a bit uncomfortable after a while because you haven't got this really big, fluffy thing supporting your spine. And suddenly you've got to hold your own spine up, and suddenly your legs begin to hurt. And so sitting on the floor naturally invites many different seated positions. And so I would invite our viewers and listeners to just make friends with the floor. And, we all start from different places in our movement journey and injuries. And, we always can only start from where we are. So doing this journey with compassion. But maybe when you're watching Netflix is to start playing with the floor and being on the floor. And the great thing about that is that you get free flexibility. Suddenly you no longer need to go to your yoga class. If you are on the floor, you are naturally going to be using your body in ways that you wouldn't if you're sitting in a chair.
That is the hack of the day.
Hack of the day. And let me add one more hack to that. So floor living, second hack is movement snacks. When you have your tea break, have a chi break. So yeah, having morsels of movement throughout the day. So, I use 25 minutes to hour timers, and I get up after 25 minutes or an hour and I have a movement snack. So I may dance to some music. I may do some press ups. I may do some qigong, which is some of the training that I've done. And that's another beautiful, joyful way to raise energy, to gain focus, and stay flexible and energized through the day.
And can I just remind people that when they are taking these exercise or floor breaks, they don't just sit on their phones. You could take a moment to focus and think about what you're actually doing. Because what I'm seeing happening, George, is people like, yeah, their brain is like escaping within 30 seconds.
Yeah.
They can't read a book. And these are adults. We're not talking about kids. We're talking about grown-ups who didn't grow up with phones. They're just so distracted, or it's a mad world.
And that's not a break, right? Like, to be scrolling on Instagram is a highly intense dopamine hit. And so it's actually not a break. So, if people struggle with procrastination, it's no wonder. You're going on something that is relatively not that dopamine intense. And then as your break, you're going to something like Instagram, which is incredibly intense. And your brain chemistry loves dopamine. There's the reward center. And so then suddenly your breaks are more enjoyable than your work. Obviously, you're not going to find it that easy to get back to work. So I have blockers on my phone. I ban myself from the internet. I ban myself from social media. I can only get on the internet on my computer. And so if I do need it when I'm out, I write a note and I come back to it, which means that my phone is for WhatsApp and for Google Maps. I actually really only use my phone for things that I want. Amazing. And a crucial bit is, these breaks is to not make them intense. Like, if you were to actually stare at a wall and do nothing, that would be a vastly better break than doing that for a minute would be a vastly better break than 10 minutes on Instagram. So yeah, reducing the intensity and moving with the body is a joyful, easy, restful way to take a break.
I'm sat here wiggling about on my chair because I am sitting on a chair, and I've been on my road bike for a couple of hours today, and now my leg hurts. And of course, if I'd been sitting on the floor, I probably wouldn't have been as uncomfortable. So I am learning, but this is like a complete reprogramming of everything, mind and body. And I just wanted to remind anybody that's listening that George just said 1 minute staring at the wall is we're not asking for hours and hours.
Yeah.
1 minute of intense focus, focusing on your breath and just watching your thoughts is so powerful. But you can't get people to do it.
Yeah, another beautiful, short little mindful snack people can take is 5 breaths. 5 breaths. I do this throughout the day. So easy. You don't need a timer. Just take 5 breaths. It may take you a minute or two, but just such a beautiful pause. Try it out. Try it today. See if you like it. And then, it's all about one of my mantras is don't make your practice so big that you don't do it. Like, does anyone else resonate with, I think meditation is probably good for me, but I don't have time for it. Well, that's because we're making it too big. And actually, what if we just made it 5 breaths? And then you feel the difference in your own heart and mind. Wow, actually, when I slow the breath, I slow my mind, it felt really good. Then you want to do more. So it's about having lots of positive experiences with these things that are good for us and then building from there, as opposed to, right, New Year's is here. I'm going to change my life in every single way, and then fail in exactly 3 hours and 26 minutes.
And then go through that whole cycle of shame and I'm not good enough and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah,
We go.
exactly.
And those
So
voices
then
in
we
their heads
create
go
our
mad.
reality. Yeah.
There is actually a 5-finger breathing exercise. I'm sure you've done it. It's 5
Nice.
breaths. I will record that, I think, after this, because there's something people can take away.
Great.
We breathe in, we breathe out, you know it. Then it's done. And at least it keeps people busy in their body as well as busy in their mind and busy in their breath. And I often say, as a sophrologist, we entertain the mind by focusing on one of the millions of little movements the body's making. It just helps them ease into this attention or consciousness that we're looking to shift. Can I please ask you about nature again? Because you are in a city, and I just podcasted recently with somebody who moved from the city to the countryside, and they started talking about urban nature. And I thought this was quite an interesting thing that I haven't really seen. It's obviously not on my YouTube feed or my social media. Urban nature, George. What have you seen going on out there? What's your advice to people? And that excuse of, well, I'm in the city and I can't access any of these lovely things like the Cairngorms or the French Alps.
Yeah, so nature in any city, if we look close enough, is making its living somewhere. You know, pigeons, seagulls, everyone's pets, the weeds in the side of the pavement, breaking through people's gardens, trees, parks. So there is a lot of beauty to be found and to explore. And ideally, like if we can live close to, if we are in a city, a nice park, you know, that is going to, you know, there's studies that show you have a significant number of years added to your life expectancy if you live close to a park in a city. So this is accessible. And ideally, you know, we as a civilization want to be building cities that integrate nature into them. So it's easy to then move between the ease and the necessity of living in a city in the modern world, while also then integrating into nature. So I think for me, it comes into intention and like actually making this important and not making it so big that we don't do it, but at least once a week, getting into a relatively wild space. I'm lucky in the city of Bristol that there's a park that I can walk to that's quite extended. And then those micro moments of just noticing where nature makes its living in our everyday surroundings to reconnect.
That's a beautiful, beautiful catchphrase, where nature makes its living, because you're right. Just going outside and looking, in fact, those weeds have popped up again between the tarmac. You know, nature is so resilient. And I think there's so much on the Moving Art channel as well that complements the work that you're doing. And I was watching fantastic fungi. What do they say in America? Fungi,
fungi.
fungi. I'm always a fungi. But I was watching and I just was like, I was bewitched by the beauty.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh my gosh. And there's people talking about psychedelics, which I am not going to talk about today because I put that on my blacklist for the conversation for another time, maybe. But, you know, there we are watching this incredible experience in nature. And it's there, right there beneath our feet. There we go. I have got a million questions left, but I want to give you the opportunity to recommend anything you've seen recently that you loved, that you'd like other people to look at, apart from your amazing film, of course. Books, podcasts, or articles, anything that you've heard of recently, you think, oh, yes, I'd love to share that with people.
What's alive for me at the moment is internal family systems, which is a really beautiful way of understanding our internal world. So these voices in our heads that we have talked about, yeah, it turns out we're not alone in that, and it's part of being human. And there's a superb book, which is an easy listen on Audible, called No Bad Parts by Dick Schwartz, who made internal family systems therapy, and is a really beautiful primer to help us understand our own internal world. So yeah, internal family systems, you know, there's all these interconnected parts and voices in our internal world. And in the same way with a family, like if the little boy is being naughty, you don't say, right, Timmy, I know you're only 6, but you're out in the streets. You know, you don't kick him out. You try and understand, you know, what's happening for this part of you. So, you know, for me with the Underminer, it's like it's still with me. It's like I haven't removed it, but I now understand it. And I can say, okay, well, thank you, Underminer, for that very doubting thought. But from my place of wisdom, I am going to say thank you, but no thank you. And yeah, you're not ruling me. I'm not allowing fear to rule me. From my empowered place of wisdom, I lead my life. Internal family systems gives us one way of understanding that the dynamics of the self, the core wise self, and how it relates to the parts of our psyche.
What's most bizarre, or synchronicity, of course, is I was listening to a podcast yesterday on Dick Schwartz's internal family systems, and it really resonated because of this internal versus external conversation. So I will also find that podcast, because if people say I haven't got time to listen to Audible or I haven't got an account, there's also an amazing podcast. And how odd that you've just said that, given what I heard yesterday. The thing I'd like to share with you also, because I'd love your feedback on, is a Norwegian study I was reading yesterday about the gut microbiome being changed totally within 21 days just by putting your hands in the soil for 20 minutes a day.
Wow.
So it was a sort of rewilding type study that they've been doing, completely affected the gut microbiome. And I see people with gut issues constantly. And oh, look, there's a solution. George, grounding and access to the earth. What do you think?
Beautiful. I love it. I haven't heard of that one, but I know that the biome, the gut biome, is so important and has its own intelligence. Like, again, one of the challenges of the thinking mind, it's a beautiful gift of being a human being, but it takes credit for everything. It says, I run the show. My name is George, and my brain, this little voice in my head, runs the show and deserves rationality, deserves all the credit. When actually we have 100 billion neurons. So like neurons we think about as normally only in the brain, 100 billion neurons in our stomachs. So it can get on with all the complexity of digesting our food without any intervention from the brain. And then all these amazing bacteria and beings that are not us and yet live in us, and we need them to survive. And so really they are us. There's this beautiful symbiotic relationship. And the problem with our highly processed food is that it basically kills off all of that beautiful goodness. So yeah, isn't it amazing that just putting our fingers in the soil can transform that?
Incredible. I think let's go outside and do some potting, or at least some. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you, George. I feel like I could have talked to you all day. And I wish that we were meeting in person. I've just got a new chai tea recipe, so I would be making you a cup of that, serving it whilst having this conversation. So that would be the reality if we were together. But we're not. We're virtually here, and we're still hopefully sharing these messages with other people. Most importantly, if people want to find you, George, where's the best place to go to?
Yeah, so my YouTube channel, George Thompson, you can see the film there, and I'd love for you to watch the film with friends and family, have your own screenings. We've got a screening guide for free as well. And so it's really a film designed to stimulate conversations. And then I also run events now, doing 5 retreats next year, London, Wales, in the USA. And that's a time where you can really come and embody the ideas, and doing so in community. They're really beautiful experiences. So balanceispossible.com is where you can find out all that info.
And I actually found you through a post on the Centre for Integrative Medicine. So that's where I stumbled across your work.
Yeah.
And I'm off to book my flights to one of your retreats, because that sounds like it would be an absolute game changer. But if I just did 1 minute of staring at the wall from now until then, that will also change everything. So let me see how I get on. Thank you so much, George. And I cannot wait for this to go live.
Thank you.
And start sharing.
Thank you, Lindsay. Celebrating your energy and joy. Like, I can really see how you can bring service to the people that you're with. And we are this mycelium network of people contributing to a more awesome world. And big thanks to the viewers and listeners as well, taking the time to learn about themselves in order to feel more empowered, so that they can, with that foundation, serve and create a more awesome world. Let's do it.